Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Michelle Cho. I am not Professor Zur, but I am filling in for her because unfortunately she couldn't be here. Although I am told she's watching online, so she's here with us. Thank you for coming to our panel. We are following up, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's wonderful speech. But our panel today on the Korean Wave features SUHO, as you all know. So I'm going to go through the bios of the panelists for today first. And so SUHO debuted as a member of K-pop group EXO in 2012, and since has gained global popularity with his distinctive vocals and powerful performances. In addition to EXO's remarkable success with chart-topping million-seller albums, world tours, and a historic performance at the 2018 Winter Olympics closing ceremony, SUHO has established himself as an acclaimed solo artist, beginning with his 2020 debut solo EP, Self-Portrait. He recently released its follow-up, Gray Suit, receiving praise for his unique vocal charms and musical sensibility. SUHO has also proven his versatile talents as an actor with roles in Korean movies One Way Trip and Student A, drama series Rich Man and Star of the Universe, and musicals The Man Who Laughs and The Last Kiss. Our next panelist is Angela Killeran. Angela is CEO of CJ E&M America and also head of Global for the parent company. Since 1995, CJ E&M has been leading Korean entertainment in film, television, music, and other areas. CJ has produced or has distributed globally acclaimed content, including Oscar-winning film Parasite, Tony-winning musical Moulin Rouge, record-breaking Korean box office hits Extreme Job, Ode to My Father, along with popular television series Crash Landing on You, Vincenzo, and unscripted formats I Can See Your Voice, and many more. CJ E&M presents KCON, the world's premier K-culture festival, and the Mnet Asian Music Awards, or MAMA, Asia's biggest music awards. Our next panelist is Marcy Kwon. Marcy is Assistant Professor of Art History at Stanford University and co-director of the Cantor Art Center's Asian American Art Initiative. At Stanford, she's a faculty affiliate of Modern Thought and Literature, the Center for Comparative Studies in Race and Ethnicity, Asian American Studies, and Feminist and Gender Studies. She's the author of Enchantments, Joseph Cornell and American Modernism, and her work has appeared in Third Text, Modernism/Modernity print, Panorama, Journal of the Association of Historians of American Art, and edited volumes on social art history, self-taught art, race and representation, and the early history of the Museum of Modern Art. I also have one more person, very important to introduce to you, Raymond Ha, who will be providing interpretation for us today. Raymond Ha is a freelance interpreter and translator who has previously translated essays on South Korea's domestic politics for the Korea program at Shorenstein A-Park. He is also the Director of Operations and Research at the Washington, D.C.-based Committee for Human Rights in North Korea. He has a BA in politics from Princeton University and an MA in political science from Stanford University, and he'll be with us for a few more panels at our event. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. So just to tell you a little bit about format, we're going to have each of our presenters speak for several minutes. And we will also engage in some conversation, and then we will open up for Q&A. Our panel is from 2 to 3:30, so we're going to see how well we can manage time. But our first speaker for today is SUHO. So please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for introducing me. I'm nervous. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is SUHO, and I'm from the K-pop group EXO. It's an honor to meet the professors, students, and members of the Stanford community. What sound is? And they're watching online too. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. And there are people watching online too. Hi, guys. I'm so excited to be here, but also very nervous. My English is not perfect, so I apologize in advance in case I make a mistake. Okay. I will try my best. Does anyone here know what SUHO means in Korean? Wow. 이수환 선생님 gave me this stage name. By the way, in my company, we address Mr. 수만리 선생님, meaning teacher. 수호 means what? To guard. Yeah, right. So anyway, you could say I'm the leader who guards EXO. Today, I'm here as the guardian of EXO and K-pop. Today, I want to talk about my understanding of Hallyu and K-pop that I have felt and seen in the past 10 years, directly up close. Before I begin my story, perhaps these video clips might brighten up your day. Let's watch it together. How was it? Wasn't it great? Thank you. What you just saw was possible because of the fans around the world who support EXO. I'm always grateful for their love and support. It's been 10 years since I became a part of EXO, member of EXO, you know? It's been 10 years, right? Yeah. As you know, we have been communicating with our fans through countless songs and performances. Grow, Overdose, Call Me Baby, Monster, Love Shot, Tempo. What's your favorite song? Love Shot? Right. Grace? Thank you. Since 2014, EXO has performed 133 shows in 76 cities around the world during 5 global tours. We have been to here, the United States, Canada, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Japan, China, and many other beautiful countries. And every single time we perform, it hits me. Hallyu has no borders. My favorite moment during these world tours is meeting our fans at the airport as soon as we land. Such a passionate welcome by our fans make long flight hours worth it. It always touches my heart. And at the concerts, fans will sing along throughout the entire concert in Korean language. In countries like Mexico, Chile, places far from Korea, so difficult to visit often, they would hold the banners in Korean language and sing along in Korean. It's just mind-blowing. Every time I witness such a scene, I thought to myself, so this is Hallyu. Do I feel the power of Hallyu only on stage? No. I feel it every day. Here's an example. Dance covers uploaded onto social media, like YouTube or TikTok. I watch them all the time. Every day, every night. Singing and dancing to our music. These shared video clips are proof that Hallyu is not just a content to be seen by people. It's for all to enjoy together, participate, expand. And as our 선생님 has said, it is now a recreatable tool. For me, the most shocking thing watching these covers were the details. Not just the dance moves. They replicate our outfits, shoes, hairstyles, and guess what? Even my facial expressions and subtle gestures like this. Anyway, the important lesson I learned is that my habits or expressions that I have or make without realizing can influence many people. I'm honored by this love and attention, but all of this comes with a responsibility. My on-stage and even off-stage, things I do or even words I say has an impact. Once that truly got into my head, I began to feel the weight of it and learned to take responsibility. There are many reasons why K-pop took off as the center of Hallyu, but for me, this is the reason why we are loved. Yes, communication. The clips are from when I met fans in Korea and around the world. It was part of my recent new album promotions, and there were also surprise live interactions online. Not just EXO, but all K-pop artists make extra efforts to communicate with their fans continuously. We communicate through live video calls with both Korean and foreign fans. We try to share stories with our fans, all to become a team. These experiences eventually create a strong bond between me and the fans. Years of communicative efforts are also a critical part of us, especially when we train together to dance. is famous for 군무, you know, perfectly synchronized dance moves. It's a result of hours and hours of practice and passion. As you can see, all of our choreographies are very challenging. So don't tell 선생님. I sometimes wanted to run away. I still have nightmare about it. Jokes aside. This can only happen when there is synergy from that bond we share. In this bond, of course, fans are included too. Our EXO fandom name. Anyone know what it's called? XOL? And then Eddie? Yeah, right. Do you happen to know what L means? Yeah, this is Stanford. Yeah. It's a short for EXO Love. EXO is a group put together by joining EXO K and EXO M. Now, in the alphabet order, what comes between K and M? Yes, Stanford. When EXO and EXO-L, EXO could only be complete when EXO and EXO-L become one together. We consider our fans as an important part of EXO, not just a fan from a distance. Yeah. I'm always be with you. I believe this sense of community connected K-pop artists and K-pop fans together into a strong bonded team. So when I hear fan stories like, I started trying and liking Korean food because of EXO. I came to Korea to study and live here because of EXO. I'm so grateful for those who love Korean culture because of EXO. K-pop is now incredibly popular and beloved worldwide. TV dramas like Squid Game, movies like Parasite. What's your favorite? EXO is not a movie. Excited? Yeah, it's a good reality show. Yeah, right. They are gaining international attention and winning awards. And look at me. I never imagined that I'd be standing here to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Korean program at this prestigious Stanford University. Unbelievable. I want to end on a note that summarizes my understanding of Hallyu. I want to stress that Hallyu no longer stops at one specific art form. We are witnessing its expansion into our society in every angle. Music, dramas, movies, food, education, and more. K-culture is more than a passing trend. It's a global phenomenon that will continue to grow and evolve. EXO as a group, we always greet with our motto, we are one. EXO promises to continue our journey to bring the world together as one through music. And I truly hope that our music will resonate with you. Thank you for having me today. And we are one, EXO 사랑하자.
Amazing. So we're going to move on to our next speaker.
Sure.
Angela, take it away.
It's a difficult act to follow up. I'm here today, as you nicely introduced me, on basically representing CJ, E&M. And I'm in many rooms like this, kind of representing all facets of Korean entertainment. But today we're here to talk more about on the K-pop side. I have 2 videos, and I think you get a sense, obviously, of EXO. We do KCON in the US, and I just wanted to, there's some video from the last time we did KCON and what that means to us. And then a video that's not ours, but I think is very enlightening. I mean, it's a great example of how global K-pop has gotten. So if we could show those videos first. Somebody has a clicker. You just have to advance it. Green. KCON 2020, we weren't able to have it, but we're having it this year. So that was all the different acts that we had across KCON in Los Angeles and New York. And a lot of those groups, I think, groups that have gone on to become much bigger, we've seen over the last 10 years that their first stage is at KCON. And that's really our main focus, is on fans and introducing fans to give them their first in-person experience of idols that they've seen on YouTube or they've seen on television and they really want to discover, and to grow their fandom here in the US. But speaking of fandom, K-pop fandom is really all over the world. And there's this, I just have to show this video. You'll get it. No, and it's a great example. I have nothing to do with Pepsi. I have nothing to do with any of those kids. But when we saw that video, that was not your average fan tribute video. That was a major international conglomerate saying in a market in Chile, how are we going to sell Pepsi, Cola in this market? We're going to lean into the K-pop trend. And if imitation is the greatest form of flattery, they went through the trouble of casting, training, dancing, making an entire song. And you saw that they were singing in Korean. And I was actually waiting for the part. There's a version of it where they do that thing that's really great about K-pop, where you have Korean and English, and in their case, they even mix in Spanish to it too, and they bring it all together. And so, in the earlier session, I think when Secretary General Moon Pan was talking about, the need to be global citizens, and that we should all aspire to be global citizens, I think from the very beginning, what we've seen is that K-pop fandom is almost an embodiment of that. It's people looking beyond their own culture, and they're wanting to discover new frontiers, new communities. Initially, these communities were very much bonded only online, and only much more recently has it been much more in person as people have grown in numbers. And so that's been an amazing thing to see. But just going back a little bit, does K-pop include? Is it just about pop music? I don't think so. I think it encompasses the larger area of kind of Korean popular entertainment. And I've been really lucky at CJ to be part of each different segment of that. And so, being able to work on Parasite and that campaign for really driving towards this becoming the first time a Korean film had ever been recognized in any sort of way at the Academy Awards. I think, and this is just a completely personal, this is not a statistical fact, if director Bong had not made Snowpiercer before that, would Parasite have been able to go through? I'm not sure. I mean, Snowpiercer, for those who don't know, it was his English language movie. It starred Chris Evans, Tilda Swinton, and when you saw it on screen, everything in front of the screen looked like a Hollywood movie, and behind that was a completely Korean producers, directors, DP, everything. And it was kind of this throwing down the gauntlet and saying, look, just because we are Korean doesn't mean we don't know how to be global. Everybody can tell global stories. And Parasite then goes back and becomes a very, very Korean story and wins all the awards. But everybody always says, oh, it feels so Korean and yet so universal at the same time. And I think K-pop does that. Korean dramas, I think you kindly introduced Crash Landing on You, Vincenzo. These shows that CJ has done, we've been working on, we were the first to actually license Korean dramas onto Netflix. So actually, and I represent the office here, we did like a really little deal 10, 12 years ago. Could you please take our movies and our TV shows? Well, how about 10 of each? We'll see how they do. Let's just see what happens. And we started off that way. And then later on with Studio Dragon becoming much more premium and investing much more in dramas. Of course, it has just become much more widely seen. And so, in some ways, in the same way that KCON becomes like the first stage that people discover new artists and then they grow bigger, I think that the fact, in some ways, that Korean dramas have been widely distributed through Netflix then allows, if you've ever had the algorithm, you know that if you've seen a single Korean drama, it will always come back. They'll always suggest you something. Then you have something like Squid Game just really kind of, breaking out from that because you have created the groundwork for that. So Korean entertainment has been really great for that. But I also realized that I'm speaking to a room of experts. So as I said, usually I'm in mode, if I'm in a Hollywood room or mode of like, K-pop 101, like what is K-pop? This is not that room. But the question that I get asked in Korea and here, and it's something that we actually amongst ourselves constantly ask is, how did this happen? It's a very improbable situation, almost as improbable as, the economic miracle on the Han is the rise of all things Korean entertainment. And, nobody has a definitive answer to that, but I think that's just the quick, three-piece answer that I wanted to leave you with here today. Some of this is well known, and some of this is just, personal thought on that. First of all, there is this idea of what is the importance of culture in Korean society. And maybe I should back up a little bit, because people are like, what is this girl with an Irish name talking about Korean culture? My father's American, went to Korea in the 1950s as a Jesuit priest, and was part of the founding of Sogang University. And then he met my mom, and then he decided not to be a Jesuit priest anymore. Yeah, funny how life works out that way. So, they got married and they came to the US. And so my sister and I were born in the US. But then after a few years, they decided, we really want to go back to Korea. We want to be part of this dynamic country that's changing and growing. So I had the really great blessing of growing up in Korea from the time I was 3. And then I was in international school, and my mom was not pleased the fact that I couldn't speak Korean. Or she's like, you speak Korean, you seem to hear it, but you can't read and write it. This is not right. And so she just yanked me out, and she put me in Korean school, which was another gift, actually. The Korean parent thing is real. Later on, you're very grateful. And it has kind of set my path. So from this perspective of sometimes I'm a secret Korean and sometimes I'm a secret American in a room, because Korean people think I'm probably not Korean, and vice versa in the US often. But you have this great perspective on both cultures. And Korea, in the way that I grew up as a hybrid, has, from its colonial history, is a country that almost lost its culture. You lost your right to your own name, the way of traditional dress, and you see how very close it could have been to losing that. And so to regain that is an incredibly precious thing to hold on to. And then at the same time, you have this incredibly strong US military presence. So, when I was growing up, I could watch all the American TV shows because there was the American Forces Korea Television Network, AFKN. And I think a lot of filmmakers, people who are, older, they learned English that way. They saw the American shows. There was a very wide recognition and understanding of American culture. Then you had also GIs there. They're young kids, right? Kids in the military. They're listening to music. They're bringing in, Korea has a really strong hip hop scene as well. And I do not think that would exist without the strong the US military presence in Korea. And so these coexist side by side, this very homogenous country with a very strong culture, but also this very vibrant and very accessible, pre-internet, very accessible American culture that sits right there. So you have people who grow up with a facility with different ways of, whether it's pop music or filmmaking or television, that's more global, I think, than in many other countries. So that's the part that's known. The other part, the secret ingredient, and this is just really only my personal perspective, and I'm embarrassed to say this sitting in a university where somebody else should be studying it, but what is it that Korean entertainment has brought? It's actually, I think, the greatest example of providing something to the market that doesn't exist, and it's what I call kind of female gaze entertainment. Hollywood shows, film, television, music, in almost every other culture is very male gaze driven. It's all about, how sexy are the girls, like, how bad boy am I, that sort of thing. And I often have talked to fans of K-pop and Korean dramas, and it's the same. It's like, oh, I love it because it's, it rekindles a sense of romance. It's something that feels different than all the other entertainment that I have. So is it less weird that Korean entertainment served this purpose around the world, or the fact that nobody else thought to make content for female audiences, especially for younger female audiences, and Korea was able to do that? Now, is that weird for a country that's traditionally affiliated with more conservative, potentially male chauvinist society? Well, in that case, you can, again, my slightly theory, not proven, is that it also has to do with money, right? Advertising in Korea is driven and oriented to gaining female, not dollars, won, right? In the US or in many other countries, the most valuable audience that you can buy through advertising is a younger male audience, 18 to 34. That's your sweet spot. Everybody probably knows the fact that CBS is the biggest network, but does not command the highest ad rates because they have an older population. It's ESPN, whoever has really younger male, they're the ones getting the dollars, they're the ones getting the big contracts, and so then it's not hard to figure out that you have a lot of entertainment heading that way. In Korea, tradition says, 안방, like women control the power of the purse. And a lot, like I work in a big Korean company with salarymen, and it's not a myth. Their wives have the accounts. they don't have the money. And so Korean economy, in many ways, the consumer side of it has been driven by women buying. And then it makes sense that you would have television oriented to that. And as time has gone on, it's also gotten younger, so it's appealing more to younger women. So I don't think it's any mystery that I'm looking out at more than my normal 80% female. Korean entertainment, I think, is uniquely qualified to have this global impact because you have, often in a drama, you'll have a spunky Korean woman lead. I mean, even from like 2000, My Lovely Samsun, which I think people remember, right? When it came out, people were like, why? She's not pretty, she's whatever. It was a huge hit. And like two beautiful men fighting over her. You have more recently things like Goblin or Guardian, Dokkaebi, Lily got, again, a very like kind of normal, everyday girl being fought over by the gods, actually. And so I think that there's that. And it's a really good thing that Korean entertainment has kind of created this place in the world. And that may be a bit of its secret to success, but also the incredible global orientation of people like Isvan 선생님 and EXO have made it all possible too. And it's so funny. You started in EXO 10 years ago. KCON's first year was in 2012, and actually we were so small at that time, we featured XOM, and they were like the biggest. It was really cool. And so I've had a soft spot in my heart ever since for EXO, even though you were not there. So. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that perspective. It's so helpful. So, Dr. Kwon?
Yeah, so first of all, it's just a real honor to be here. Thank you, all of you, for coming out. It's already, the most fun academic conference I've ever been to. So to begin, I want to acknowledge that Stanford sits on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe, which is currently seeking federal recognition. Of course, Koreans know firsthand the violence of colonization, and it is incumbent upon us to remember that wherever we walk in the Americas, we walk on occupied indigenous land. I also want to say that I'm a scholar of art history and Asian American studies. Rather than Korean or East Asian studies, Michelle is actually the real expert on K-pop, and I will say I've learned a ton from her articles. I would absolutely recommend you take a look. So because of this, my comments today are intended as personal reflections on my own experiences of K-pop. And specifically, I am so sorry EXO-L's BTS. So in September 2021, I received an invitation to record a podcast about the mid-century Japanese-American sculptor Isamu Noguchi. At this point, the pandemic had already settled into routine, so I gave little thought about logging into a Zoom call with Asian women located in Canada, Singapore, and Japan, a cross-continental conversation that would have been unthinkable in pre-pandemic times. My camera was turned off, so when I first appeared on screen, rather than my face, my co-panelists saw a Zoom icon of 7 Korean men clad in eye-searing sherbet satin. I am not exaggerating when I say that as soon as the picture appeared, everyone on the call squealed. It took us at least 15 minutes to get back to the topic at hand, which the organizer described as, quote, ideas of connectedness across time and space, hybridity, and transnational global/Asian solidarity. But of course, we had just been talking about this. So this story speaks to K-pop's oft-discussed ability to create a global community of fans. And anecdotally, it speaks to the fact that roughly 100% of the Asian women professors I know got into K-pop during the pandemic. Was this swell of interest in K-pop during the past 2 years just mindless escapism, a way to fill the days with synchronized dancing and sparkly outfits? Perhaps, but the growing interest in K-pop among women of color in particular speaks to me of something more profound, a desire for solidarity grounded in a shared sense of joy rather than a shared sense of oppression. So to clarify this point, I requires a brief, very brief, I promise, history lesson into the origins of the term Asian American. So the term Asian American was invented in 1968 in the Bay Area by anti-war, anti-colonial student protesters under the banner of the Third World Liberation Front. So to clarify, this is not to say that there were no Asian Americans in America before '68, it's just that the term was invented. So despite the vastly different experiences of, for example, Japanese, Chinese, Filipino, and Korean Americans, we are often grouped together in the way we are treated, stereotyped, and excluded by normative white American culture, which cannot tell us apart. In other words, the term Asian American names two things: solidarity among Asians living in the States in particular, and a shared experience of being treated as other by mainstream American society. For many Asian American women, K-pop offers a chance to bond over something we love rather than how we are treated. So this really speaks to what Angela was talking about as well. So I don't think it is a coincidence that the Korean wave, at least in the States, has taken place against the backdrop of growing economic inequality, a seemingly unsolvable climate crisis, and the resurgence of far-right nationalism, white supremacy, and anti-Black and anti-Asian violence. Like many, I found K-pop during the pandemic at a moment of uncertainty, low morale, and seemingly interminable amounts of inside time. So although my sister, hi Casey, had previously introduced me to second generation groups like Girls' Generation, SHINee, and 21, I did not allow myself to get pulled in until I heard Dynamite on the radio and was shocked to realize it was by BTS. So Dynamite debuted in the US charts on September 5th, 2020, just 2 months before the US presidential election. And although I did not realize it at the time, K-pop gave me something else to look at on the internet, aside from the election, which quite literally felt like a matter of life and death for people of color. When I see K-pop's success in the US, I can't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction that these Asian men and women are beating America at our own game. In a country where Asian languages and bodies are still considered interchangeable and foreign, there is something delicious about seeing the meteoric rise of Korean culture and the way it destabilizes America's sense of its own specialness. K-pop fans also know something about being stereotyped. They're often dismissed as brainwashed female consumers driven by delusional superficiality. And this stereotype is driven by a heteropatriarchal fear of female feelings and desire. So for me, being into K-pop sometimes feels like a small way of refusing to play by the rules of misogyny. So this is not to say that K-pop can solve all of the world's problems. Purchasing an album is an act of consumption, not resistance. But I can't deny that it feels nice to have these cracks in the suffocating norms of American culture, even if I am aware that K-pop itself can create and enforce these norms as well. So K-pop builds an encompassing world populated by glamorous stars, fantastical aesthetics, and perfect pop music. And the music really is amazing. When I first entered this world, I felt like Alice in Wonderland, alternately dazzled and unsettled by K-pop's lush visuals and sonic landscapes and intricate fandom lore and customs. This is a world that demands to be experienced with others, and this, I think, is the core, at least for me, of K-pop's draw. To explore this world with my friends, my sister, my mom, allows us to bond over shared experiences of delight, pleasure, and joy, to giggle over videos or dance at concerts. The pandemic has shown us just how fragile and precious these experiences can be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is such a great panel already. So we do have a good amount of time for Q&A. I am going to take the moderator prerogative and get us started and ask the first question. In the meantime, if you have a question and you can come up to the mics and maybe line up and see what happens, we can kind of have a structure of sorts like that. So, okay, great. Okay, excellent. So, I actually want to start off with a question for SUHO, and others can chime in too if you have thoughts on the panel. But I'm really interested, so in your talk, you mentioned that Hallyu is more than a trend. It's no longer limited to one genre. It's, this various types of content. But can you tell us a little bit about what else is happening in the content industry? So what is the next kind of frontier for K-pop, for Hallyu? If it's, music, television, and film, I know there's
else?
more, yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about that? What are you most excited about?
I think with the growth of the metaverse, I'm hoping that Korean content will continue to influence global culture in the borderless virtual space. And Gwangya? It's a place, virtual place, virtual space of the SM town. So I think you'll be able to enjoy more soon.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Do either of you want to comment on this kind of move into
Yeah.
virtual spaces?
Well, I mean, it's great that Suho just mentioned metaverses. Metaverse, there's been a lot of areas where I think K-pop leads and others follow. I mean, these days it's really kind of commonplace to see people organize business and things around fandom. I think K-pop really showed the way on that because that was not a thing, right? It took, I don't know, how many, 20 years, 30 years for Marvel to come out of something like a Comic-Con and say, oh, having fandom around comic books can be a thing. But nobody else saw that either. And then, but we really organized very quickly around fandom. And metaverse is actually just an extension of that. The only successful metaverses will be around passion, communities of passion, and people who have a heart for something. And so K-pop is really perfect. And then, just speaking of this virtual space, there's all the existing types of media, right? The very traditional ones. But there's a huge amount, you always need original IP and original ideas and creativity that comes out. And the fact that Korea leads in Webtoon and all of that IP, which we've seen already changed, made into television and films, I think that's part of why we do believe that this will keep going. Because there's always new energy coming into the mix and supported by fandom.
Great.
I want to hear from all of you.
Yes, we have, so many people. Okay, great. So we are going to start to take questions. We have an interpreter who may have to come in. So this is going to go a little slow. I apologize in advance if we don't get to everybody. But yeah, why don't we start on this side and we'll kind of alternate. So go ahead.
Hi, my name is Yubin. I'm a sophomore at Stanford. Stanford 2학년 재학 중인 지유빈이라고 합니다. I actually wrote my Common App on EXO. 스탠포드 데이비스에 엑소에 대해 썼었는데 여기서 이렇게 학생으로 이렇게 학교에서 만나 뵙게 돼서 정말 영광이고. And the question I wanted to ask is, how do you, all the panelists, feel about non-Korean or even non-Asian people trading in Korea to become K-pop idols? 한국인이 아닌 다른 외국에서 온 연습생들이 이렇게 K-pop 스타가 되려고 트레이닝하는 걸 보면 어떤 느낌이 드시는지 궁금합니다.
Thank you. Thank you for doing your own translation.
I think it's really hard to explain even in Korean, so I need some translation. 정말 어려운데 설명하기. 한국인이 아닌 외국인들이 한국인들과 함께 혹은 외국인들끼리 이렇게 K-팝을 하는 것은 정말 되게 좋은 영향이라고 생각합니다.
It's very hard to explain, but I would say that it's a good influence when non-Koreans come to Korea and engage in K-pop on their own or with Koreans? I think overall it's a very good phenomenon.
한국인이 아닌 다른 나라 친구들이 함께 K-팝을 함으로써 좀 전 세계에 더 K-팝을 많이 알릴 수 있고, 그리고 사실 음악으로 좀 우리가 하나됨을 좀 더 표현할 수 있어서 저는 되게 의미 있고 앞으로도 계속 됐으면 좋겠습니다.
So when people from other countries outside Korea come to Korea and engage in K-pop, I think this further provides an opportunity to spread K-pop around the world even further. And I think it's very meaningful in the sense that it provides an opportunity for people from different countries to come together in music, and I think that's very meaningful.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nolly. I'm a third-year undergrad student at Stanford studying computer science.
Oh yeah.
Hello? Okay. Given the Hallyu wave and the growing popularity of K-pop in the West, specifically the US, I think there's also been a phenomenon where many fans hold a misconception of South Korea as a pop music utopia. And K-pop and K-culture companies do tend to encourage and even sell that misconception. Do you think there's a point where that does more harm than good?
Since I'm here from a company, why don't I take that? I was speaking earlier about this kind of romanticized ideal, right? And so is that reality? No. Is it a contribution and a tonic and a counterweight to, like, I don't consider watching rap videos to be complete reality either. It's an alternative vision of what reality could be. And so I think there's also a lot more of a healthy discourse and a growing, there's just even in the quick KCON video, there's a diversity of genres and styles within K-pop formally, and then you have like shows like Show Me the Money, which brings up like new hip hop artists. So there's a lot of different artistry there. I think that the days of complete and strict image making are probably behind us. And it's just part of the natural progression of things. And part of that was probably as Korean entertainment made its first foray onto global stages, there's a tendency of Korea, you have to be the best host and the most perfect presentation of yourself, and everything has to be great because you're a country that originally had nothing, and are you qualified to be at the table? And so if it's a follow-on effect of that, I think that's understandable, and I think it's changing, but there's also a place for this kind of beautification of things. It's a good antidote to not great things that are happening in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add very quickly that, if you turn that question around and thought about it in terms of Hollywood, I think you could get your answer there, because I think it's a very similar phenomenon, similar situation, right? So, yeah. Does anyone else want to add something? Okay, we will move on.
Yeah.
All right.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha James. I'm actually a doctoral candidate at the University of Texas at Austin, and an incoming Fulbright scholar to South Korea, so I'm very excited to be here. Thank you. And she actually took my question. So my second question, based on, Angela, part of what you were saying was sort of the South Korean entertainment's ability to speak to the female gaze. Any of the panelists could answer this, but how does that change then with different cultural understandings of masculinity and femininity? Because it is different, I think, in South Korea versus in the West.
So, as I said, I'm not an academic, and I hesitated to even bring it up because it's been like a pet theory of mine. But if I look at the countries around the world where K-pop and Korean dramas are really popular, they do tend to be culturally more conservative countries. And I think it is, I was just in the Middle East, extraordinarily popular. Latin America, we saw the video, it's very, very popular. Yeah. Does that mean K-pop appeals to chauvinist countries? I don't think so. I think it talks about almost that the more conservative the country is, they really need this kind of countervailing balance to the type of entertainment. So we'll see how it changes. So far, you also hear a lot of how, more on the Korean drama side, it's very family relationship driven. So it's very relatable, right? Like a lot of American entertainment is not that, but every single one of us has a family. So why aren't we having more of those stories? Yeah, I mean, we're in a unique position right now where we just get to do, make movies and tell stories that we just think are good, and not like who are we making it for and changing it for somebody else, but everybody seems to enjoy them and love them, and it's actually a blessing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, thank you for speaking with us today. My name is Yulim Kim, and I'm a graduate student here at Stanford. That was a perfect segue into my question, because I also wanted to latch on to what you said about the female gaze and how CJ in particular has capitalized, or the Korean entertainment industry has capitalized on this. On the flip side, a lot of countries in the Western world kind of see Korean culture due to the female fans. They see it and they don't take it seriously. And so I was wondering if CJ has encountered any obstacles due to this dismissive stance in the Western world, or have you leaned into it?
I would say that what we've done has leaned into it. I mean, honestly, the first year that we did KCON, if we back up a little bit about why we did it, we had a network in the US that we had just launched called Mnet America. And Mnet America was, to feature K-pop and all these things. And but we were given we bought a channel, but the channel did not, this is very media business. The channel did not have any sub fees. And if you don't make sub fees and you're a cable channel, you're going to be out of business very, very quickly. So we had to get advertisers. And no advertiser would believe that K-pop was not a Korean-only thing. They're like, why would anybody else watch K-pop? Like, it doesn't make sense. And so we thought and thought and thought, and we're like, why don't we do an event and show people and meet people? And there was a lot of reasons. We wanted to attract more attention to our channel. We wanted to create a community. I was saying to Michelle earlier, CJ at that time didn't have any artists, but what we thought we could have was a relationship with fans and bring all the artists to these fans. And so, it's completely not the real reason we did it, but with my ad sales team, it was like, we put on the first KCON for maybe 12 people. And it was advertisers so that they could actually see and believe that it was real, because nobody took us seriously. And so you have to do a lot to get people's attention, and that job is getting easier and easier. But every day it's like, oh, who'd have thought that? Well, there's really great examples of, if you see K-pop from a really long time ago, you see that the ingredients are there. It didn't just come out of nowhere. And so it's great to have people be able to discover it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just would add too that the model of fan-artist mutuality that K-pop has had embedded in it since its beginnings is starting to be respected and observed by US culture industries. And so that's something I think that K-pop has really pioneered. Okay, I think maybe what we should do is, so that we can hear from a lot of you, is collect, maybe 4 questions, so kind of go back and forth a couple of times, because I see the minutes ticking away, and I know that we're going to have trouble, so.
Right, so hi, my name is Aditi Jain. I'm a senior at UCLA studying psychology and minoring in Korean language. So my question is that people could argue is that as K-pop becomes more globalized, it loses its inherent authentic Korean influence. So do you agree with this? And if not, what keeps K-pop's authentic Korean identity?
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Vivian, and I'm a Stanford student, third year studying East Asian Studies and International Relations. this is a question mainly for Angela, I think. You mentioned that Korea wanted to present an image that was more perfect on the international stage at first, but from my personal experience, it seems that East Asian and Korean fandom in particular has a lot higher expectation in terms of adherence to traditional beauty standards, conservative morality, political neutrality, and things like that. For example, international fans seem to want more humanness, tolerate more mistakes, etc., and want political involvement and social activism. So how does CJ in the US strategize to deal with that difference? And in addition to Professor Kwan, how did these differences that I just spoken of fit into the connectedness that you describe? Even though many Asian women can enjoy K-pop, they often enjoy it very differently. And how do we reconcile the differences, especially in the degree of progressiveness?
Great.
Hello, I'm Neha Vinjapuri. I'm a freshman at Stanford University studying computer science. And I know in 2015 you visited India, SUHO, and you were trying to see how the Korean market and Korean entertainment industry could be further sort of introduced in different countries. And I was wondering if you saw any changes from 7 years ago to now, and if you think that there are other countries that you want to see more growth of Korean industry in.
Hello, my name is Christelle. I'm a freshman at Stanford from Bolivia. Today we've heard about the importance of being a global citizen. I believe this includes being welcoming of all cultures and celebrating diversity. Given the global reach of K-pop and Korea's beauty standards, what is the K-pop industry doing to become more welcoming of diversity and to celebrate it?
Thank you. So we have an array of questions. What is essentially Korean about K-pop if it's also very hybrid? We have a question about, the fact that Korean fans seem to hold K-pop idols to a very high standard, or Korean celebrities in general. And then questions about, the cultural dimensions of the kind of ideal aesthetics that you see in K-pop. And then, Korea, China, Korea, India, K-pop in India. So anyone can jump in. I tried to summarize the questions quickly.
I can start so very briefly about the question of cultural authenticity. I would of course love to hear from the panelists, but as a scholar who thinks about race and ethnicity, cultural authenticity to me always raises some red flags, where I'm like, oh, are you just policing or assuming a kind of essential identity? At the same time, we see how this comes up with, I'm just going to go there, even though I know it's very sticky, with cultural appropriation. And I do not think that those concerns should be dismissed. I don't think that this question of trying to combat essentialized notions of a pure kind of Korean culture is necessarily opposed to kind of asking for recognition that is due and really in some ways capital, right, financial and I would say attention to the producers who originate content. So I would just say that those are the two dimensions that I think through. And in terms of kind of reconciling, your really excellent question about reconciling kind of different standards, I would say that's a question I live. It's really hard, and for me, I guess my bias might be as an art historian. But I am someone who, I think that in the abstract, these questions are very difficult to answer because they're so, when they're distanced from something, you can just get into these arguments. But I'm someone who really cares about the cultural object. I'm going to get really academic here. This cultural theorist named Jacques Rancière called an object in common. It's like if you have something that mediates that question, there's actually some room there for opinion, for conversation, for dialogue. And so that's kind of what I was getting at maybe in my paper, which was thinking about K-pop as an object in common, not something that has inherent qualities, but has a kind of capaciousness that allows, that in fact mediates a lot of these conversations.
Any other thoughts on any of the questions that were asked?
어?
Would you like to go? Yeah.
일단 한국 K-팝의 좀 고유성, 아이덴티티가 좀 퇴색되는 게 아닌가라고 질문해 주셨는데, 일단 저는 이제 한국에서 하는 한국인이 하면 K-팝이라고 생각해서 전혀 그런 걱정은 없다고 생각을 하고, 그리고 계속해서 변화해 가고 또 예전 것을 또 취하면서 계속해서 변해 가는 게 K-팝의 앞으로 가야 할 방향성이 아닌가 싶습니다.
So there was a question about whether, as K-pop becomes more global, does it somehow lose its authentic Korean color? And the way that I look at it is that if it's pop music made by Koreans, it's K-pop, and I think it'll continue to evolve. It'll continue to change. We'll draw on previous elements, but that's essentially the way that I look at it.
물론 한국 전통의 악기라든가 소리를 함께 넣는 것도 되게 좋은 아이디어라고 생각하고요.
And I think it's a good idea if we can incorporate, say, Korean traditional music or traditional instruments into K-pop.
K-팝에 한계가 없다라는 것을 말씀드리고 싶습니다.
And I also want to emphasize that there are simply no limits to where K-pop can go and how it can develop.
그리고 인도에 간지는 되게 오래됐지만 오랜만에 지금 제가 3년 만에 미국에 왔는데 제가 잘생겨서 그런 게 아니고 제가 그냥 한국인이란 이유만으로도 되게 관심 가져주시고 되게 그러니까 저한테 되게 긍정적으로 이렇게 파지티브하게 되게 리액션 해주셨는데 그때 저는 정말 K-팝, K-컬처 그리고 코리아의 위상이 점점 올라가고 있지 않나 그걸 몸소 느꼈습니다. 이번에.
As for India, it's been quite some time since I went there, but just some personal reflections on coming here. So coming to this conference was my first time coming to the U.S. in 3 years, and just some personal experience. And I don't think it's necessarily because I looked handsome, but when I told people that I'm from Korea, that I'm a Korean, people treated me very positively. They were very interested, and I felt firsthand just how the status of Korea has changed through K-pop.
Okay, so I'm minding the time. I think we're going to do one more round. So if you could try to be brief in your questions, we'll take 4 more and see what kind of responses they bring. Okay, this way, yeah.
Thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Fatima. I am a current senior at Stanford studying linguistics. So my question is specifically for Angela and SUHO. I'm really interested in the growth of K-pop and kind of where it's going to go in the future. So you talked about how it's so attractive to females and just non-men. Is that something that's kind of seen as a ceiling in the industry of okay, we're just going to put all of our resources into what we have kind of optimized for the people that clearly have interest? Or is there going to be, in your opinion, is there going to be a push towards attracting men as well as K-pop grows?
Hello, my name is Geraldine. I'm a Stanford alumni, currently a software engineer interested in the impact of how social media and its great reach impacts mental health. So my question is for SUHO. So during your talk, you mentioned that fans pick up on your tendencies during your performances and outside of it. As a result, K-pop artists end up with a lot of responsibilities to be careful about their appearances. So with so many eyes across the globe on you and your peers, how do you manage your mental health, and what can society, and I guess tech companies do to help create a healthier environment for you guys to grow, perform in, and for you guys to continue your outreach across the globe? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm a freshman at Stanford studying philosophy. My question is about how the K-pop industry is known for a huge team of producers that actually produce these catchy music. And I wonder how, as an individual artist, how much power and agency you have in the production process, and how will the dynamic change from like an artist in a group and an artist, like a solo artist.
Hi, I'm Crystalline. I represent Stanford Healthcare as a clinical nurse. I'm doing a qualitative research right now on nurses working in COVID units. And one finding is that they said that one of the coping mechanism of my respondents is listening to K-pop and watching K-dramas, which is something good because I also work in the COVID unit. But as a simple question, I've been a huge XOL ever since, and since 2006, even if K-pop is not here yet. I mean, like BoA, you know, like since the old K-pop. So SM artists are known to have long-lasting fandoms. So for the panelists, what do you think, besides communication, contribute to these long-lasting fandoms like me? You know, thank you.
Great. Okay.
Maybe while he's getting translation, I'm just gonna. Do you want to go? So I forgot. I didn't answer an earlier question, but there's, if I take two, you know, how does CJ orient towards fans in the US maybe differently that we do in Korea? And it's a little bit related to, I think, another woman's question about should K-pop try to appeal to men as well, like expand beyond the audience. So they both have to do with how we're expanding audiences and treating audiences outside of our traditional areas. I think there's two sides to that question. You know, of course, we always try to expand our audience. I'm so aware that this is on YouTube, and I'm going to get dinged for this. No, one of the first, pretty early on, and you know, we always talk about, you know, I start from a marketing background, so. Start with the core, make sure that the message gets to the core, make sure that the core is energized, and that's young women. And then you start to look for adjacent audiences. Whether that was dealing with like film or like I was dealing with esports, kind of the same. But in terms of K-pop, one of the adjacent audiences that we had recognized early was gay men. And we did very undercover. We did a K-pop night at Rage, which is a big K-pop, a gay club in West Hollywood. We did a panel. The part of KCON that nobody really pays attention to, because everybody pays attention to the main concert event, that's where all the artists are, whatever. But the convention was created for fans and for us, and that really speaks to both sides. It's the side that we are treating it differently. We are kind of, you know, we're not approaching it as CJ, we're approaching it as what does American fandom want and what does this community want, because we really took that duty seriously to be this meeting ground for fans. That we thought, that of course we needed the advertisers, but the other part of it to make it a convention and a concert was all these fans have, you know, are online the whole time, but they never have a chance to meet each other in real life. Why don't we do that and have people come together? So we have rooms dedicated to the different fan clubs. You can have your own meetings of your fan clubs, do whatever. And I think that that is an organic way to start to grow. Are we going to change the genre of things just to appeal to new audiences? I'm not sure. I think that that is also growing, though. I've seen, not just gay men now, more and more boyfriends and just fans and people coming. And, you know, a couple of years ago we had not just Dynamic Duo, but Dean. Dean is an amazing artist of a different kind, and all these people showed up for him. So it's about recognizing and promoting different genres that appeal to different audiences, as well as taking sometimes a slightly guerrilla approach and slightly different approach in the US that feels authentic to an audience here.
I just want to interject that the next session we have a couple of documentaries that will be shown. One of them is on K-pop, and you'll see a lot about kind of the future of K-pop, so that some of those questions may be answered there. So yeah, just wanted to chime in on that. if we want to prioritize some other questions instead. So, Suha, do you want to go ahead?
일단 뭐 엄청난 스케줄로 힘들 것 같다. 그리고 정신적으로 힘들지 않냐라고 여쭤봐 주셨는데 당연히 그럴 수밖에 없고 저희 멤버를 포함한 K-pop 아티스트들 다 음악적으로도 열심히 하지만 다들 스스로 멘탈 케어에도 정말 멘탈 케어도 열심히 하는 것 같습니다. 먼저.
So there's a question about, isn't it very stressful to have this demanding schedule and have everyone watching you all the time? And of course, it is quite difficult. And I would say that not just members of EXO, but also other K-pop stars, not only do they practice very hard in terms of their music and their performances, but I think every one of them practices mental health care as well.
특히 저 같은 경우에는 이제 여행을 통해서 멘탈 케어를 하고요. 그리고 다른 K-pop 아티스트들은 뭐 잘은 모르지만 이제 제 친구들, one of my friends, K-pop artist 친구들 같은 경우에는 뭐 playing computer game, playing golf, or working out 여러 가지 방법으로 좀 같이 스트레스를 해소하는 것 같아요.
As for me, I take care of my mental health by going on traveling abroad. And as for my friends as he explained, some of them play computer games, some of them go golfing, and I think everybody just has their own way of de-stressing.
특히 SM에서는 사실 힘들 때 언제든지 상담할 수 있는 정신과 상담 의사도 있습니다. 연결되어 있습니다. 네.
And at SM, the artists can always reach out to a counselor for help with mental health issues.
네, 그리고 마지막으로 오래 지속되는 그 팬들과 K-pop 아티스트의 관계가 오래 지속되는 이유를 여쭤보셨는데 사실 저는 communicating is the important part of K-pop artists and K-pop fans. As I've told you earlier, basically, I think they love our outfits and dance moves and singing, but I think communication is the most important part of us. 이 정도.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I think in the interest of communication, I've been given permission to go like a few more minutes. So we could maybe do one more round and have actually, I think the purpose would be for us to hear your questions, to have SUHO hear what you have to say. And if the response gets a bit truncated, at least there's this opportunity. So go ahead.
Hi, my name is Cyan. I'm a graduating senior in immersive design here. So I'm really interested in the production of content. And one thing that I've noticed in a lot of these talks about Hallyu is the emphasis on some very specific icons, like Squid Game, like Parasite, like EXO, like BTS. So I'm curious what that does, what that pressure and what that heaviness on kind of upholding the political goals of soft power does to those icons, and what does it mean for the types of content that we create?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole. Hi, my name is Nicole. I don't go to Stanford. I'm just an XOL. Try not to freak out, so, which is why I'm trying to record so I remember. I don't really have a question in response to the program. I just want to know if I can give SUHO this early birthday present.
Okay.
Yeah, here, Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Melody. I'm an undergraduate at the University of Irvine. And I'm also an English major. And one of the questions I had was mostly towards SUHO and Angela.
that like COVID was like a very unexpected situation, and how was the artists themselves and then the company able to navigate, you know, not falling or faltering, you know, the industry, because like a lot of businesses have been closing down. How are they able to navigate that? And what are you doing to like, you know, influence it more rather than just keep it all online?
Great question. Okay, this our last, and then we will turn to Brazil.
Hi, I'm Destiny. I'm a marine biologist from Mexico, and I wanted to say thank you for your comments on the female gaze. They were very much on point. They resonated a lot with me. And to SUHO, I brought you two things. The first one is a question about your new album, about Great Suit. I really like it. I really like the direction that you took. I like that it's more of progressive rock. But I'm also wondering how much being a part of K-pop has affected your taste in music, like the direction that you want to explore in music. Because your previous album was a little bit different from it. And I know that every EXO member and everyone in K-pop has their own taste. Like hearing Kai's music or Chen's or anyone's, it's so different from yours. So I would like to know how much of what you do as a group is what you want to do, and how much of what you do as an artist, as a soloist, is what you want to do. And the second thing I brought you is I crocheted 9 tulips, 9 yellow tulips for you for a gray suit. So.
Great. Yeah.
먼저 yeah, okay. Actually, it was the first album I've released in 2 years, and it was really meaningful to me. So I worked on it with more passion and more excitement than usual. I wanna play unique music that only SUHO can do, and it's hard to. It's so difficult to explain, but it's like I really like rock and British pop. So I think I can't explain exactly, but it's like a K-rock, soul rock, yeah, soul genre, yeah, that's it. Okay. Are you satisfied? Okay. Thank you.
Do you want to chime in, Angela or Marcy, about?
I honestly forgot the earlier questions because I'm like staring at the crocheted tulips.
I think one of the questions that was really interestingly asked in this last round was, you know, is the pressure of, you know, being the next biggest global hit, or, you know, producing works that can have reverberations that top whatever came before. Is that something that people in the industry are worried about or thinking about? And does that impact the type of content that is created? I think that's a great question.
I think the interesting thing that we've seen, precisely because of something like a Parasite or a Squid Game being so Korean in a way, is that there's an expectation that people can just do what is authentic to them, and it will just find a global audience on its own. Like, I think they used to think that, oh, we have to change it because it has to be more appealing to a global audience. I mean, Director Bong did Parasite, and he kept saying, oh, this is my little Korean movie, because I don't want to have the pressure of doing Snowpiercer again. This time, there's 2, so next week, there will be 2 different CJ movies at Cannes in competition, which is kind of an amazing thing. It's never happened for an Asian country, much less an Asian company, since the 1950s, when Japan had 2 different films. One of them is director Park Chan-wook, who has a film called Decision to Leave, and the lead actress is Tang Wei, who in real life is married to a Korean director and lives in Korea, but she's an amazing Chinese actress. And he is just making the Korean movie he wants to make, because similarly, There was Handmaiden was a huge production, and he just wanted to kind of focus in on a smaller story, but now, of course, it's going to Cannes. The other film is Koreda Hirokazu, who won Parasite, the Palme d'Or before Parasite did, but he has made a Korean movie with a fully Korean cast. So I think there's actually, one of the things that we kept saying, we were obviously championing Korean content when we were really promoting so many parties for Parasite, so much press for Parasite. But we kept talking about the importance of the Korean content and why it was time for it to be recognized. But in separate communities, when we were not talking to the main Hollywood people, to everybody else, we said, look, we, of course, are very invested in making sure that Korean content is very successful. But we think this is an incredible example that, honestly, if we can do it, anybody can do it. Nobody speaks our language. Nobody, there are just so many factors that work against this, that this should be an example that anybody can tell their own stories. So this is, I think, actually pressure should be off. People can just tell the story that they want to tell and not worry that it will only have this little tiny audience, that things can find larger audiences.
So we are at the end of our panel, unfortunately, so I'm so sorry to those of you who are waiting to ask your questions. But does anyone want to kind of have some final words, closing words? And we will wrap things up.
Please. Today I feel like having a fan meeting. I'm sincerely grateful for your love and support, and I will come back with EXO members to have a concert. But not now. Please wait for us. Yeah, I hope that our music will resonate with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, great. So we have time for a 10-minute break before the next session, which is when we will get to see these wonderful documentaries. So please come back by 3:45. Thank you.